Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Plant-Fuelled Femme. Today, we have a special guest with us. I don't believe we've touched on this topic before, so I'm super excited. Elizabeth Vanderwit has joined us today. Where in Canada are you from?
I'm in Saskatchewan, so we're like
Okay.
in the kind of in the middle, like of the prairies and everything. So
Okay.
like the hardest one to pronounce.
Right. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Elizabeth is a women's health coach. She's also you're a doula, which is a
Yes, I
super
am.
exciting profession. And today we're going to dive into a really super fascinating topic of the three things that every woman needs in her cycle. So, Elizabeth, thank you for joining us. I'm very excited for our conversation today, and just welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm getting new into this kind of space of talking a little bit more about it because people have to find me and learn the things that I know a little bit. So, I guess like you said, I am a holistic women's health coach and a doula. I specialize in supporting women over 30, anywhere in between the reproductive years. So I have training from fertility all the way to menopause. So pregnancy, postpartum, you've got it. In between there, I probably know something about it. So I really like taking things as like a whole body health approach. So I really focus on like herbalism and nourishment and really just focusing on like that mind, body, soul kind of connection a little bit. So I really appreciate you having me here to talk about that today.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what we believe too. We can nourish the body, and it can heal and function the way that it's supposed to. And if we take that time to restore foundational health, and I love that that's the space you're in as well. I think that our
Yeah.
listeners are really going to be very excited for our conversation today. So thank you. Um, just out of curiosity, Elizabeth, how did you get into this space that you're currently in?
Well, do you want the long story or the short story?
How about the medium story?
Okay, I'll try to keep it down. But mainly it started when I was 11 years old and I got my first period for the very first time. And I ended up just researching women's health like nobody's business, pregnancy books and reproductive like how it all worked. And I was even into like the midwife slash medical textbooks that you could find
Mhm.
for women's health because I was just like trying to absorb it all. And so from there, when I turned 18, I was in university at the time to actually do business and become like a manager for one of the stores local in my town when I ended up having a friend tell me about doula work. And so from there, I signed up for that course after dropping out of business. And from there, it's kind of just been a really deep dive into learning all that I could. And then with COVID, I kind of slowed down on things. And now today, I'm like, you know what? Last year, I was like, I'm so done trying to do things that I don't want to be doing. I want to be doing this. So I've been really putting an effort forth to talk more out with people like yourself and try to just share like what I know and hopefully, people find me.
Awesome. No, I love that. So you dove in like at 11. You were like, I love this stuff. It's fascinating.
Yes.
And I just want to know everything that I can.
Yes, yeah. I didn't think that I had enough brain smart to be a OBGYN and I'm not very fast on my feet. So that's why I always thought like midwifery,
Mhm.
medical stuff, I wouldn't be fast enough, I think, to make a very good call in a situation of need. So I thought it would be best for everyone involved, including myself, because let's not cause harm to others instead, you know just be on the side as like a doula for the more the support as
Mhm.
well, right? For really being like the coach that people need and cheerleading people on, as I always like to say.
Right, right. No, I love that. And I love that you're also realistic in your expectations for yourself. I think that's another area that women tend to struggle with.
Yes, yes, we do. We very much do. And I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm
Oh.
often thinking myself, I'm like, oh, I could do it, but then I'm like, we've already had this discussion a few times. So unless something changes, it's looking like this is the path for me, and I'm very happy doing it. So I think it just was meant to be the way it was.
Right, right. No, that's amazing. All right. So you have your doula practice. Do you also do women's health coaching on the side? So you like work
Yes.
one-on-one with individuals.
Yes. So I've kind of made the business all as one hub. So that's why
Awesome.
Fruitful Womb Doula Services was designed as kind of like a reproductive area. And I hope to eventually like merge with other people in the profession so that we could eventually make like a good collective for women, kind of like
Mhm.
really have it all. But right now it's just me as the women's health coach and the doula. So it's kind of in between those two roles that I play normally for women out there.
Right. Oh, I love that so much. A collective health hub. That's some good stuff there. You're on to
Yes.
something. So keep pursuing. Um, awesome. So with working with women from like all ages of reproduction, because I mean, obviously that starts very, like in your case, it
Yes.
can start at 11 technically,
Yeah.
all the way through perimenopause when we still can get pregnant. So what does that look like to have such um, a broad clientele?
Well, it's very hard to speak to them. It's very hard to like I've had many different type of business coaches and support to
Mhm.
talk about how to get people to find me, right? Like that niche thing that they talk about.
Right.
And that's where I determined the over 30 because over
Mhm.
30, there are many women who are still trying to conceive. There are
Yes.
many women who are having children over 30. There are many women that are even going through menopause at 30. They
Mhm.
shouldn't be,
Right.
hypothetically, but there are women in that stage. So I thought if I narrow it down a little bit that way to help people as best as I can. But you need to keep very organized. You need to have all your notes in very good places to make sure you don't want to tell someone going through menopause, like, oh, yeah, how's that fertility thing? Don't want to
Right.
mix it up.
Right, right. Yes, because protocols really change. Like you
Yes.
said, at 30, some women are still perfectly healthy and having normal cycles, but at 30, also we start to see that with a lot of the population anymore, there's a big shift. And yes,
Yes.
women are going into menopause at like 30, 32. Um, and that's pretty young, but then the rules of the game shift and then
Yeah.
different techniques and protocols definitely apply.
Yes, exactly. And so that's why I tried to focus on the whole body, kind of keep
Mhm.
the theme the same a little bit for whatever area as we are, because women, with our cycle, we are that 28-day roughly estimate, right,
Right.
of the cycle. And
Yes.
so we do need to kind of keep a flow of that in our life, regardless of where we're at in the stages of reproductive health.
Right, right. No, that is absolutely true. And like you said, even though the length of the cycle does change, there is still foundational health that needs to be like key during that time, which kind of brings us, as a really great intro into, so what are these three things that every woman needs to know in her cycle?
Well, I thought the very big thing we would talk about nourishment, and depending
Yes.
on the time here, I really kind of wanted to break it down per area of the
Okay.
cycle.
Yeah,
So,
that would be amazing.
just a few ideas for like with bleeding and, just from there a little bit. So I did keep notes so that way I don't stumble over my words a little bit here. But so when we're in our menstruation cycle, right? We've got menstruation, we're bleeding. You're wanting to try to eat as much dark leafy greens. You want to have nuts, seeds. Some people suggest sea vegetables, bananas, and definitely raw dark chocolate. We love chocolate. I'm always like, enjoy your chocolate. A lot of other people say you want that fatty acids. You want those foods like avocados, wild caught fish, right? Those kind of ones. I put EFA, but I'm forgetting what it stands for a second. So you forgive my brain today, unfortunately. Another one big is wanting to have lots of water. I say this kind of throughout the whole cycle, but you want to make sure you have enough water for like half your body weight, so in pounds of water. So that's a lot of water, and oftentimes we're not really drinking what we need to be exactly. So that's why I always tell people, I'm like, regardless of where you're in your cycle, water is very important. So once we get to the follicular phase, you want to really get into nutrient-dense foods. So things like protein, healthy fats. You're going to want for like root vegetables, oats, quinoa. So there's like a whole bunch of different ones that you really want to strive for. So especially if you're on different dietary restrictions, it's best to kind of look around to see what fits in the category that you can kind of substitute for where you're missing. So say if you're vegan,
Mhm.
what can you substitute instead of the animal-based products, but still get what you need to? So, again, like the avocados are very great. I dislike avocado, but it's like one of the best ones that they say. So I'm like, so it's helpful to try to find things, even if you don't like avocado, to eat in exchange of that. So like ghee or coconut oil to add maybe when you're frying your food or something like that. Um, for ovulation with nourishment, you really want to focus on, like I said, the quinoa, lots of leafy greens, vegetables, rice, and cold water fish. So the different areas where the fish live actually makes a huge difference in our nutrients from the fish. So if they live in cold water, that makes a very big change. So very, very important stuff to know a little bit. So another thing with the luteal phase, which is the next one after we've got ovulation, is you're going to want to look again to go back to more brown rice, have lots of protein in there. You're going to want to eat more things like salmon, beans, and then ginger, turmeric. Those are great ones to have. So that's just a little bit of nourishment on all four stages there of
Right.
our cycle.
No, I think that that's super helpful. And I mean, obviously with the fish, it's a protein, but then it's also the omega fatty acids, which you're getting
Yes,
from the avocados as well. And then, like you mentioned, if you're plant-based, the avocados are a great source. As far as proteins go, there's the fava bean tofu, soy is good. Um, those kind of things, texture pea protein, those would all be great places to get your protein from as well.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we have our first pillar is going to be nutrition or nourishment then for supporting
Yes.
your cycle. What is your next necessary item?
My second tip is about loving ourselves. So it's
Ah,
very hard. I say it all the time because oftentimes when we come from a place of speaking about it, often people are like, "Oh, well, they got this in the bag," and I'm like, "Well, not really." Like we try our hardest as well, and I'm sure you might even have the same thing. But to come from a whole body approach, you really got to look at the emotional and our mental that we struggle with. So you got to think on how are your thoughts treating you? Like, are we constantly negatively looking at ourselves in the mirror and be like, oh, yep, that looks way too wrinkly on my face today? Or, oh, I need to add extra makeup because my eyes look like, we just come up with all these little things. But normally, if we start our day off negatively, it continues throughout the whole day.
mhm.
And so, what turned out to just one little thought in the morning will turn out to almost a whole day of negative thoughts. And those negative thoughts can our emotional and our mental really plays a big part into our physical health as well. So I always try to tell clients that it goes beyond our like just what we're eating. It goes way beyond that, right? It goes way beyond exercise and all that stuff. Like what is the emotional stuff? How is your stress? Like high cortisol that plays a huge role into our cycles that can mess everything up. And in this day and age, I think it's hard to avoid stress. So I was just trying to tell people if there's any way we could kind of counteract it a little bit. So I'm very big believer in like breath work. I really like enjoying. I listen to this one guy and he does these fun ones where it kind of sounds like you're almost making duck noises as you're breathing. It sounds so funny, but I love it. And it really is just like a good way to focus and calm yourself down, but like in a light humored method a little bit. So I don't know if that's what he's intending with his videos, but that's what I'm getting. So it's really that huge emotional part really that plays into us as well.
Right. No, I think those are also pillars that we work on inside of what we do. And I love that you brought up that you have to love yourself. I don't think that so many people realize that what we speak inside of our mind, our brain perceives to be true.
Yes.
And when our brain perceives something to be true, it doesn't know that it's not true. It thinks that it's true. So if you're constantly feeding it negativity and telling it these things are wrong with you, you're going to see that transfer over into how your body responds.
Yeah. And so that's like a really big thing with clients that I'm always like, that's what we
Yes.
kind of need to take a look at beyond the nutritional. Because sometimes people are totally in technical good health, right?
Hmm.
Like they
Right.
physically are, but there's so much going on emotionally that
Yes.
that could be a stopping maybe for your fertility or, like those things can play a really huge role into that as well.
Right, right. And as you're going into perimenopause, then there's so much stress. If you're compounding
Yes.
that by like self-hate talk, then you
Yes.
just, oh my gosh, you end up, I think, experiencing way more symptoms than you probably would if you were not speaking to yourself that way.
Yes. And it's so hard, especially at like where, let's say, hypothetically, most perimenopause, the average is in their late 40s to 50s.
Hmm.
At that age, it's become such a cycle. You've done it for a very long time. So
Right.
to try to say, okay, I'm going to make a huge change then, that it's so hard. It's so hard. So
Hmm.
really, I always try to tell people, I'm like, if you can get this going a little younger, just a
Mhm.
little bit easier to try, that's really crucial.
Right. Right. But like you said, a lot of women don't. And like
Yeah.
coming from, I think I'm a little bit older than you, and coming from our generation, like that's how our moms talk to themselves. And they didn't talk to
Yeah.
themselves quietly. They talked to themselves out loud. And we heard that. And so that's what we, perceive the way that we should then speak to ourselves. So it's like you have to unlearn, something that you were taught. And it's not, like you said, it's very challenging. So it's not that you can't unlearn it, it's just going to be a longer process. And I think learning to give yourself some grace while you learn to speak better to yourself is something else that's really important.
Exactly. You actually literally just read my mind. I was just gonna say to make sure you give us some grace.
Good.
You were on that we were on the same wavelength there.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's so important. And that goes probably for women of all ages, is we really just
Yeah.
need to give ourselves more grace for sure.
Which it's very hard when a lot of the world around you doesn't, especially
Truth.
when you've got like media and there's just so much around you, like if based off Instagram, say, or if
Mm-hmm.
you're on a lot of different social media platforms, it's often about trying to look better in this way, or you're
Mm-hmm.
always comparing yourself to different areas. And since I'm a plus size woman, I've had a lot of times where, you compare yourself to someone that's maybe thinner. And I think that's kind of a common theme if you're in a bigger body. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's always just like looking at that, don't compare yourself to other people because you
Right.
are very beautiful on the inside and outside. And you just got to tell yourself that and kind of try to believe it when people tell you.
Right. Right. No, I think that's something else that's truly important to note. And
Yes.
then that made me think too for a moment. So I don't know if this happens with your clients, but sometimes we get clients in and it's not, yes, they are bombarded by social media, but it's more, there's like all these specialty groups that they could get into. And there's not necessarily so much like physical comparison, but like they think there's a lot of like well-meaning tips, and then they get so bombarded by information that they're so confused and they don't know what to do. um,
Yeah.
and it makes them feel, well, like overwhelmed and very confused and not confident in themselves. Is that something that you see as well?
Yes, yeah. A lot of the time it's kind of like a knowledge overload, especially
Yeah.
since we have so much free resources out there as
Right.
well. And that's where one-on-one kind of is more beneficial because it's kind of more tailored to you a little bit. So it definitely is something where I'm kind of like, well, Google's helpful for a lot of
Right.
information, but we're all very different and
Mhm.
different things work for different people, of course, too. So,
Right. Right. No, that's very true. That makes me feel better though, to know we're not the only ones getting
no,
getting
I'm
that.
certain you're not.
Yeah, it's just been a real uptick like over the last 2 years. It's just something that's new, I guess. Um, all right, so nourishment, loving ourselves, practicing stress management, which I love. What is your third pillar of the things that we need?
Well, my third tip is maybe a little woo-woo or a little too holistic always. So I always tell people I'm like I'm warning you ahead of time. But it's really about looking to nature. So I
Mhm.
feel that there's so much around us. Like I'm very blessed to live in a very rural area. But there is so much in nature that can be beneficial to us. So if nourishment and beyond that, for our mental, what else can we do to kind of help ourselves? And there are things definitely with herbs like
Mhm.
supplemental herbs that you could take. They do say though that the teas are better absorption for us, which, if you're like me, I'm not the best with eater and taste. So if things are gross, I'm automatically turned off and it's like, no thanks, I'd rather supplement swallow, thank you. But it does absorb better when it's in a tea format, especially if it's had time to soak into the water. So I definitely always say that, looking into herbs like Vitex or red raspberry leaf, red clover is very good in the perimenopausal stage. It's endless. I could go on forever, but those are the three that kind of came to head a bit. Another thing along with that, and that's a little bit more woo-woo, is have you ever heard of yoni steaming?
No.
No. Okay. Well, yoni steaming is it's vaginal steaming. So I always like to say it's like a coochie, it's like a tea for your coochie. So in there, you're having your herbs and it steeps with warm water and that goes into our vagina. So from there, those herbal nutrients are being absorbed into our uterine
Mhm.
lining And I like I said, it's a bit woo-woo, but it goes outside of Western medicine. And there's many cultures like in Africa or I was thinking Mexico, China, even parts of China that
Mhm.
use this. So I always try to like recommend that, maybe looking into that a little bit as something that could be beneficial for you on what properties. And of course, like I said, each herb is different.
Mhm.
And, having someone to help you along that route as well can be beneficial, that knows the herbs to use a little bit for that.
Right. Yes. No, I think being helped or having some guidance through a process like that would be super beneficial. Um, what are you mentioned chasteberry, you mentioned red raspberry. What are some of your other favorite herbs for hormone support?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Let me think on my list here. I know Dong Quai is great for like fertility.
Mhm.
Let me think of the other ones that I have all in my drawer that's not in front of me. I'm always like loving my list, and then when it comes to head, I'm like, oh Lord. But yeah, Dong Quai, red raspberry leaf, as I had mentioned. I mean, in terms of vaginal steaming, I don't know if it's as beneficial in tea format. Lavender is really good as
Mhm.
well. So, those are more of the floral ones seem to be very
Mhm.
beneficial too. Dandelion root, it can be beneficial. So, just a few that came to head.
Okay. Yeah. So with the lavender, I know the essential oil of lavender is good for a lot of things. What would it be helping in this instance?
Well, lavender, oh, that's such a hard thing because I don't have my notes in front of me.
Okay.
I'm very good with notes in front of me
Hmm.
type of person.
Okay.
But I've had the main case of lavender use has mainly been for fertility.
Okay.
At least for myself, like that's
Hmm.
something I've used in yoni steam for fertility wise. It can help balance out the hormones
Oh,
from,
that is super interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think each herb has different based off which way you absorb it. So,
Okay.
like I said with the teas, but there's some that are better as tincture format. Other ones like the yoni steaming are more beneficial. So it kind of determines on like what the problem is and then to what
Hmm.
method you're taking it as well.
Right. Right. No, that's true. I know that different preparations do alter how your body absorbs it. And then you
Yes,
come into the entire thing of like, how is your body going to respond to this anyhow? So because everyone is
exactly.
is different.
Yeah, well, that's why the saying is that there is a herb out there for you. You don't
Right.
know which one it
Right.
is. You just
I
have to
agree.
experiment a little bit because there is a handful, more than a handful of
Hmm.
herbs that could be used for fertility. But which one do
Hmm.
you need? And normally that kind of comes down to herbs is what
Hmm.
minerals slash nutrients are we missing that we
Right.
can absorb from the herb. From the herb. So it's a very complicated process when you go deep down into it. But I always tell people like look into it a little bit yourself, find out what things would be in your category of what you're researching, say menopause or say fertility or even postpartum wise. And then from there, you could break it down to see which herbs would be best. And there's lots of people out there that are willing to help you with
Right.
just the internet to find, right?
Yes. No, that's so true. Um, as far as perimenopause goes, do you ever use the like black cohosh or maca?
Yes, I use those primarily in my yoni steaming
Okay.
clients.
Oh.
So I help that a lot for the yoni steaming. But yeah, so I primarily use those in yoni steam bundles that I help
Okay.
with clients. So I am a yoni steaming facilitator, so that's
Mm,
why I bring it up. But yeah, so Black Cohosh, they do it's kind of got mixed reviews on taking it supplementally. It is,
yeah.
I've heard more as better for like yoni steaming absorption that way.
Hmm.
Um, but again, it kind of depends, like you said earlier, about which body type, right? I think sometimes a lot of the things that we find online, we are quick to go, oh, we need, a medical facilitator to help take care of this, or,
Hmm.
and their knowledge isn't always the best on herbs as much as an herbalist would be, or,
Right.
someone in that category that could help you a little bit better.
Right. No, that is entirely true. In fact, it's probably better not to go to a regular MD because they'll
Yes.
go, "What are you talking about?"
Exactly. I mean, I did it when I was younger. The looks are not fun, or when they
No.
get cranky and you're like, "Oh, well, my naturopath said to try to take this test," and then they're like, well, I don't care what your naturopath says, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, then listen to me. I'm the one saying it to do it.
Right. Yeah.
But that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh my gosh, it is. It is. I know, like we order labs for our clients a lot, and there's generally kickback from the doctor because there are specific labs that doctors don't run, and they're like, what the response that we get is that the doctor won't order them because the doctor doesn't know how to read them. Yeah, I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, that's all right. We have a side clinic and we'll get them done. It's not a big deal.
Yes.
Yeah. No, but I agree 100%. Like it really does depend on the person as to what specific herb is going to be beneficial for sure.
Exactly. Well, that's the whole thing with like the nourishment as well.
Right.
And mentioning like, oh, these foods, like I could tell you, sure, raw dark chocolate might help or,
Mm-hmm.
dark leafy greens, but which area are you missing? So I
Mm-hmm.
personally had a hair and saliva test done, and that
Okay.
tracks
Yeah.
like a past 6 month kind of radius a little into your health. And if you see how many things, you're missing that you wouldn't
Right.
even think about, but this was steadily being missed in
Mm-hmm.
a long span of time, whereas blood work just kind of sees what's missing on the day.
Right.
So it's always best to kind of see different tests out there, like you had mentioned, that you could
Mm-hmm.
order and to see which areas you're needing more because there's so many nutrients that our body needs.
Right.
And, on a day-to-day basis, we're not always getting them also.
Oh.
Especially, I was always taught that, a potato our grandparents had, like say way early 1900s, late 18,
Mm-hmm.
that one potato, you need like 10 to get the same
Same.
nutrients that they
Yes.
had. So it's always like we have to eat almost so much more just to get what we really need. And that's where supplements, I think, also come in a really big handy.
Right. Yes, that's a really good point on the food, and it is true. The soil is just depleted.
Yeah.
It just is. Do you use fulvic acid at all?
Fulvic? Or do you
Yes,
mean folic?
fulvic.
Oh, yeah, that's common with I've most of the clients that are trying for fertility use
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yes.
I haven't had too many in the menopause era have used it, but
Really? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been having some tremendous results with women using fulvic acid that are in
Oh,
perimenopause.
oh, that's
And I
wonderful
think,
news.
isn't it? Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think it goes back to, I mean, there isn't any, of course, study, but this is all empirical evidence over this past year. I think it goes back to what you said, like on the nutrient deficiencies. And if we are having nutrient deficiencies, because it's such a great source of micro minerals, we're going to have decreased symptoms if we can bring up those nutrient deficiencies.
Yes, exactly. And I never knew that about menopause, so that's very great to know.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
no,
put
it's
it in my
great.
little notes.
The recent discovery.
Well, peer related ones are normally the better because it means there was results done.
Right. Yes, yes, we have clients having really good results.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so back to our pillars here. We have nourishment, which we went over pretty well. We want whole foods, we want real foods, we want foods high in fatty acids and high in protein and complex carbohydrates. We really want to work on loving ourselves and speaking nice to ourselves and learning how to manage cortisol better, and then using nature. And I know we really dove into like the supplements and the herbs and the teas side here, but I think that probably in nature, like getting outside and kind of
Yes.
unplugging from all of the stress of the world and just connecting to nature is a really huge benefit as well.
Exactly. And it's very hard when you do live in a more busy kind of area of town and
Yeah.
things like that. It's not just as easy to, oh, here's a forest. I'll go walk into it now.
Right. Yeah.
It's a bit different when you do live in a more rural area, but I don't know about in the States or in the
Hmm.
UK or anything like that, but you do wonder how many parks there are that are available.
Hmm.
And especially if you're not having snow and -40,
Oh
you
my
will
gosh.
definitely want to take a walk outside if it's nice weather and really just try to get yourself in touch with nature as much as possible.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's such a great tool for lowering cortisol, and it really is underused. And you're right, it is a little bit more challenging in the city for sure, but like you said, there are parks.
Yeah. And and hopefully there's enough like nature around you that you could kind of just somehow absorb that, even if you have to take a walk down your busy street, that you can pay attention maybe a little to the trees or some of the flowers. Or there
Right.
was a saying for a while about you got to stop and smell the roses. And I think today it's still very important to think about that as a just to kind of soak it in a little bit, to look around you and see what's there, right?
Right. Right. No, that's so true. Slow down just a little bit.
Just a little. It's very hard
Right.
because we're in a very fast-paced world, right? Everything's
Yeah.
always going. You've got, like I said before, lots of information always at your hands, and people coming and calling you all the time or texting. Like, you're able to be on call pretty much 24/7,
Hmm.
365. So there's a lot of
Yes.
steps to life.
Right. Yes. So unplugging is kind of nice.
Bonus tip.
Okay. True, true. All right. So that's the three things that every woman needs to know to improve her cycle, both for fertility and for menopause. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Did we cover
Ooh.
it all?
I think it's really just about trying to know that you know what's best for your body. And, trying to really find out what works for you will take a lot of trial and error.
Mhm.
I'm consistently always in my own types of trial and error. And it's just about, really listening to yourself and knowing what you need. And sometimes having to really get people on your team, your care team, your healthcare team, to really help you and support you through that. So
Mhm.
as long as you put yourself first, I think you'll be in the right boat a little bit.
Right. Right. And I think that's great. You brought up that you sometimes you need support with your healthcare team
Yes.
because the healthcare is full of systems and procedures, and often the client's not, or the patient's not listened to. So getting extra support if you need it can be extremely beneficial.
Yes, very beneficial.
Yeah.
It does take a village in all aspects of life. So,
Right. Very, very true. And we always have to continually advocate for ourselves because, like you said, we know what's best.
exactly.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience with this afternoon, Elizabeth?
Not that I could think of. I'm just really glad that, I was here and I was able to help a little bit. Maybe one tip, if not all, will be beneficial for you. And I just thank you very much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. If any of our audience did want to, reach out with questions, or they wanted to follow you on social media, where could they find you?
Well, on social media, my handle is at Fruitful Womb Doula. So you can find me on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, TikTok. I'm kind of all over the map a little bit. And then I do have a website, so that's fruitfulwomb.ca. So there's some ways to find me. I'm sure if you type up my name, it'll come up on the computer quite quickly.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing these super valuable tips with our audience. I appreciate it. I'm sure that they appreciate it. And thank you again for joining us for another great episode.